Hello, welcome back to another episode of the Business That Matters Spotlight. My name is Warren Coughlin. I'm your host, and I'm really excited about today's guest. Joanne McPhail is the managing partner of the full-service law firm of Barriston Law. It has 4 different offices. She's also a volunteer and advocate for socially conscious business practices, was responsible for making her firm one of just the first 3 law firms in all of Canada to be a certified B Corp. And she's a grad of my alma mater, U of T Law School. If you didn't know, I'm a recovering lawyer too, but I won't have her tell her stories about law school. That's insider stuff for the two of us. But there's 3 reasons why I'm really excited to have Joanne on. First, as a business owner of a multi-office location and kind of that journey, what's that like? As somebody who drove the effort to get B Corp status for the law firm, sharing some thoughts about that process and what it did for the firms, if you're interested in doing that for your own business. And as a professional advisor to other business owners, just to get her perspective on the journey. So that's a big load. I hope it's not too much. And welcome to the spotlight, Joanne.
Oh my gosh, I hope I measure up. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. Now, I always do this one thing on this podcast because I know that not everybody can stick around all the time. Some people listen to it in cars. I like to give people some piece of value right off the gate. What's one piece of advice that you give an entrepreneur who wants to align their business with their values?
I think if you can, I don't think you can align your business with you. So maybe try to keep it simple and come up with 1 or 2 things that are the most meaningful to you as an entrepreneur, and start there, especially if you're just starting your business. I mean, it's hard enough trying to make a go of it, right? And you've got so many balls to juggle and so many things to worry about, but staying true to that North Star, I think, is really important. So if you have 1 or 2 really critical values to you, put them on a sticky. I'm a big yellow sticky pad person. Stick them on a sticky on your computer monitor or wherever you do your business, and make sure that you're always aligning to that North Star. I would say do that. And then as you grow, you can do more and more good and have more and more values to try to project and adhere to. But sometimes keeping it simple in the beginning, especially, is really important.
Great. I love keeping it simple. Anything that keeps things simple is high value.
Said by a lawyer.
See, I knew you were different. So what's that North Star for you? What were those couple of values that guided you?
So I really care deeply about our people and our community. And so I think those North Stars really aligned for me when I joined the firm initially, before it became Barriston. It was a firm previous to Barriston. But there were like-minded people at the firm who cared a great deal about their own people, the people that we work with, our work family and their families and the people they support, and then doing good and making positive impact in our community. And so those 2 things for me are the things that really resonate, kind of keep me going and align really well with sort of the mission and the vision of our firm.
And where did that come from? Like, I know your dad was a school teacher and your mom was a craft.
When I was just a kid. I come from a really small town, population 11,500 in southwestern Ontario. And my family was both really involved in their communities. My dad was a local high school football coach, sports coach. Both my mom and my dad worked pretty consistently for the arts community, on the arts council in our local community. My dad was involved at the municipal level with like committee of adjustments and just doing things that were helpful and supported the community and made it better. And so I grew up sort of tagging along to a lot of that stuff. And I think that's probably where it came from initially, for sure.
And is that what drew you to law to begin with, or like
no, LA Law, the show, the TV show? That's what made me want to be a lawyer.
Is that right?
Yeah, I didn't know what I wanted to do, but it looked cool. It was probably, I'm dating myself because half the people won't know what LA Law even was, but it was this silly show on TV back when I was a kid. And I thought I wanted to be a trial lawyer initially because I tend to be lippy. And so that's why I started out. It was nothing. It was literally just that. And the aimlessness of being 20 something and not really knowing what I was going to do. And I really was interested in that area in my undergrad. So that was why law school initially, for sure.
That's it. But you managed to find a path through it to embrace and live your values.
Yes, I did. And it took me a while to do that. And I think that, I mean, you could have a whole podcast on the legal culture, especially downtown Toronto culture. Like that was certainly not for me right off the bat. More to life. Like I have a lot of interest and a lot of pursuits. And so coming north up to Simcoe County and Barrie in particular allowed me to sort of live the life that I have come to enjoy and work hard and also enjoy raising a family and all of those things that whatever you want to call work-life balance.
Nice. And so for people who are listening who aren't from the area, Barrie is a city that's about roughly an hour north of Toronto.
That's right. Yeah.
And so tell me a little bit about the firm. So I know you've got 4 locations, roughly 140 people, 40 lawyers. How many are partners, and what are the areas of practice that you specialize in?
Right. So we have 11 partners and been really lucky to have this great base of lawyers. I mean, we can get into this around B Corp and just about culture and the ability to attract and retain talent. And we've been really fortunate with the quality of the people that we've been able to bring on board at Barriston. And many of our partners now started out as associate lawyers and stuck with the firm and are now partners. So there's that upward mobility, which is really terrific. We are a multi-service firm. We do almost everything. We don't do criminal law. We don't do immigration law, but I would say almost everything else. So we've got a very large business law group, real estate, wills and estates, estate litigation, family law, municipal law, employment law. And we also have a new corporation, a branch corporation called Resolved, which does mediation, arbitration, employment law investigations that we have recently started. So pretty much the full gamut.
Nice. And when and how did you become managing partner? What was that experience like?
It's
for people who don't know, what is law firms are structured differently than other businesses. So what is a managing partner, and how did you get there?
Yeah. So, I mean, I've been involved with the management of our firm for many, many years, like almost right off the bat when I became a partner. I'm really interested in it. I'm really interested in the business of law, which is very different than the practice of law. Mm-hmm. And so I don't think everybody is interested in it. I think there's lots of lawyers that just want to practice law and put their heads down and do the work and really enjoy the work. For me, I love business. I love the idea of growing the business and working on the business and learning about our marketplace and strategy and all of that. So it sort of was a natural evolution for me. So starting out very early on when I became a partner, and then just kind of continuing on, was a co-managing partner with one of my other partners, Jim McIntosh, for a couple of years, and then just took over the reins a couple of years ago. But always pretty involved from day one on the finance side and on the firm management in general.
And I want to come to the B Corp status, but there's a couple things about that are sort of precursors to it. So first, apart from the B Corp status, what's unique about your firm? Like in my little investigations in one of our earlier conversations, you do a few things that are different from other law firms. And, for those who don't know, I am a recovering lawyer, so I know a little bit about how things are traditionally done. And you guys seem to have a couple of wonderfully idiosyncratic approaches. I'd love to hear a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think in the end, if our mission is we deliver peace of mind. And I think in the end, probably what makes us different is we do a lot of thinking and discussing about our clients and what our clients' needs are, right? So I don't know if you know Clio, but it's a I'm not paid in any way to advertise for Clio. It's a legal software company. But they do really interesting legal trends reports. And I remember reading something a couple of years ago where they did a study of like 100 or so US law firms, but they actually like sent out initial emails to get a response, and they made phone calls to get a response. And like 40% of all the initial calls went to voicemail. And then of those, like 50% were not returned within 72 hours. Like the bar is kind of low when you look at that. And so I think for us, it's really interesting. Like our vision includes creating like this truly positive and meaningful impact on our clients and our community, and transforming the law firm experience. Because I don't think the law firm experience is that great for clients generally. And I think people generally want to feel taken care of, like someone has their back when they have a problem. They want to come to a lawyer and feel like it's dealt with. If you're a business person and you have a legal problem, you probably want to have someone handle that and then go back to running your business. So we spend a lot of time, asking our clients questions about what their needs are, and then trying to react to those needs. And so I think that's what makes us different. We certainly deliver, and another mission for us is just empathy and excellence, but it includes empathy. It's not just excellence. Like there's a lot of really smart people out there, but I think we talk a lot about that. Like our clients, I think, want to feel heard, and they want to have someone, as I say, that has their back and empathizes with their situation. So I think that's what makes us probably a little bit different than your average law firm.
Mm-hmm. And so what are some of the things you do to implement that, like from a communication standpoint, to make clients feel more reassured, comfortable?
Yeah, we have a bunch of videos that we send out. Like if somebody is buying their first home, we realized how overwhelming that might be. So this is just one person buying their first home. Not a huge corporate client or a big litigation client, just your regular client who's doing something in their life that is probably one of the biggest things that they will do in their lives, even though it's not, we do many of them all the time, right? So putting yourself in their place means like making sure the communication is really important and they're understanding the process. And so we played around with, we have a cartoon video that we send out to people purchasing or selling or refinancing their home, which walks them through the entire process. Because sometimes it's mode of communication that matters. Like we can easily draft a really long email and tell them all that, but like, don't you kind of tire out of reading an email after about the first paragraph? I don't know. So it's just trying to come up with different ways of sharing information with people so they understand we're managing expectations. They understand what the process is, when they'll hear from us, what we're doing in the background when they're not hearing from us. And so we work a lot on coming up with creative ways of providing information to our clients and giving them that peace of mind. So I would say that makes us a bit different as well.
So thinking about what's going on in their lives when you're not there.
Trying our best. I mean, we're certainly not perfect, and we're always learning and growing. But we're always people, and we have families who are buying homes or doing their first will, or get sued and don't have a clue what to do and are freaking out about that process. And it's just trying to put yourself in their place and trying as much as possible to add value and help them in those situations.
So to do all of this, like that's really, there's some innovative things there. And I can tell you're sincere about that empathy and wanting to help people, which is fantastic. And not always, as you say, not always the norm in the legal profession. But to do that in a 40 lawyer firm, there has to be something, frankly, good going on culturally. So even before we even get to the B Corp thing again, like even to get everybody to buy into going to B Corp, there has to be something, I think, tell me if I'm wrong, but something special about the culture. So can you just talk a little bit about the culture, what was done to create it, and how do you preserve that?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, again, it's always a work in progress. And I think the most important thing is just the communication of what is important to us as a firm. What is our culture? We have like cool things, like our students did a video for new students coming on board even to just welcome them and kind of show them the ropes of how to be a student at Barriston. And I think those kinds of things, like, I'm super proud of stuff like that, because I just think, again, the students came to us and said, do you mind if we do this? And I just thought, wow, that's like, again, it's telling me we're talking the right talk and walking the walk, and it's coming through. And so I think, I do something every Monday. It's called the Monday Morning Motivator. I send out an email. I try to communicate what's going on in the firm, because with 4 different offices and people all over the place working from home in the office, I think it's important to just try to keep people up to date with what's happening. And then we're always talking about delivering peace of mind. And in fact, the end of every motivator, we have examples of that. And I am never short of them. People email them to me all week long for inclusion in the next week's motivator. And it's literally an email from a client that might say, thank you so much for your help. You've made my life so much easier. And, whatever it is that they've said that's really kind and nice feedback. We say who it's about and what was said in the quotes, to celebrate that. And I think because we're doing that on a weekly basis, we're continuing to remind people of why we're here, what we're trying to achieve, and then providing real examples in real time of what it is we're achieving and celebrating that. So.
And do you have written values or a written cultural statement, or is it just organic?
We do have a fairly brief written values and statements. I will say I'm probably not, I could share them better. We do once a year, we do a retreat with all of our leaders, our lawyers and our managers. And I do a report back on the strategy. And so there's sort of 4 prongs to the strategy, talking about clients and our team and innovation, and our communities are the main prongs of the strategy. And we report back what we as an executive committee have accomplished in that year, based upon sort of what were the main strategic objectives of the year. And so we try to keep it front and center, but I mean, I can always do a better job at that. The strategy stuff and sharing the strategy on an ongoing basis is challenging, I think. And so, yes, but we could do better.
That's funny. That's actually one of the things I've worked on a lot myself with clients over the last 20 years is on strategy and implementation and rollout and communication. And it was in the first 15 years of my own practice, I found it challenging with clients how to roll that out. So I actually created an online tool that automates the whole front end of the strategic planning process. And then there's a methodology I call START, which is senior team accountability, responsibility, and to-dos. And it's just a process that ensures all that stuff gets lined up in a really clear way so that everybody has predictability about it. But in a 40-person law firm organization with 140 people, it's challenging to make sure everybody's aligned with that.
Yes. Yeah. And it's interesting, law firm, like the law firm structure is a little different too, right? I always say, like, if you're in a corporation, you've got sort of the true pyramid of the president, CEO, and then the vice presidents that sort of are below that, and then the managers, or however, whatever your structure is. And it's very much top down. Whereas with the law firm, I have 10 other partners I'm reporting to who are really on an equal footing with me and all get a say. And so it's a little bit of a different structure where buy-in and trust and support is even more critical.
Mm-hmm. And then there's the not. How do you manage? I've always been interested in this in professional services environments, but generally all environments as well. It's one thing to communicate those values and inculcate those values at the professional service staff level, right? But you've got such with 40 lawyers and then 140 total people, you got 100 non-legal staff who are there, and the articulation of values is often framed primarily in some organizations as a client-facing activity. But how do you manage those values conversations and cultural conversations in the legal staff and non-legal staff? Like it'll show up differently, I would imagine. And there's sometimes in some law firms there's an uncomfortable hierarchy between those two groups.
I hope that's not the case at Barriston. I can't speak for all 100 people. I hope that's not the case. I hope that people feel that they're part of a team and that we're all in it together. We do talk to every employee once a year, and as part of that discussion, we talk about our values and alignment. We also do meet with every lawyer in the firm to review and reward something called firm citizenship or firm contribution, I think we call it now. And the aspects of that are very much aligned with our values. We talk to them about what they've brought to the firm in terms of, so get the billings and the clients and the marketing sort of aspects off the table, and let's just talk about the good you've done for both the firm and the community.
Nice.
And then we put money behind that. So I do, because I think you do need to measure and reward what you truly value. And so we've been able to implement that with our lawyers. And I think that resonates and keeps those values at the forefront. And I mean, it's incredible when you go to those meetings and you talk to everybody and what they're doing. It's like really fun meetings to have. Yeah, really inspiring.
Now, one of the dangers of any kind of professional advisory services is a kind of temptation for hubris or, frankly, even arrogance. Like I used to observe it when I was a lawyer, and I've seen it with business coaches and accountants as well, that there's this thing that because we advise business people, we think we're smarter than business people. And I've always thought that's an incredibly dangerous belief. It used to bother me when I was a lawyer. I've seen it in other coaches and other professional advisors as well. Have you seen that? And how do you, as a managing partner, how do you manage that? Because it sounds like culturally that would be very countercultural for you.
Yeah, I can't say I haven't seen too much of it. No. So luckily I haven't had to manage it. Look, if Lord help us all if I'm the smartest person in the room. I think you always want to, I don't know, I love clients I'm amazed by some of my clients and how astute they are. And I just, I'm learning from them every day. And I think if we just have that outlook that we're learning from everybody, and everyone has their strengths and their skill sets. Yeah. So I probably have a skill set that's different than yours, that's different than many of my clients, but my goodness, in terms of trying to judge intelligence, I would never try to do that. I just try to be of service. So
that's great.
I think that's generally what our teams do as well.
Good. Yeah, it is. It's certainly not everywhere, but I saw it enough to think, that's an interesting dynamic. And I always think of this as an advisor, we're more partners where we, the business owner's smart about their business and they know what they want to accomplish, and we're just an input into their decision making.
Yeah. I mean, I know we were talking in the pre-interview about the Sandbox, which is a entrepreneurship center in Barrie. And one of the things that it does is brings sort of people in similar roles together on sort of a roundtable idea. So there's a CEO group, and there's a CFO group, and there's a marketing group, and a HR group, which is really cool. And I think fairly unusual. I know there's lots of CEO groups out there, but for the other roles, I think it's been really quite amazing and helpful to people in those roles to talk to other people in the same roles, and businesses, competitive or not competitive, and learning. And I just have been in the CEO group, and oh my gosh, I get so many ideas and so much inspiration from the other CEOs in the group. It's amazing the level of talent and intelligence out there.
Yes.
Business acumen.
Nice. And within do you encourage much being a values-driven organization that does B Corp stuff? Do you encourage personal development among members of the firm? Do you have initiatives around that?
We do. We have some of our associate lawyers each year are provided with a coach. And so we've been experimenting with that over the last couple of years, and that we've gotten some good feedback from our associates. It's sometimes nice as a younger lawyer to have somebody who works in the area. This is a coach who's specific to lawyers, to just bounce things off of, and it's not somebody in the office who sort of already has an opinion, or maybe you feel uncomfortable having those conversations with. And it's really, I think, gotten some great feedback just in terms of helping them develop as young lawyers and managers of people. Because no one teaches you how to manage people when you go to law school, right? Or run a business for that matter. But those things are really important to a law firm. So we have done that. We've done things like speaker training. We've done client service training for all of our people. So we try to do that sort of development. And then we, of course, we have, lunch and learns on things like mental health, and we've done yoga instruction and stuff like that as well, because we think the whole person is important, and their health and well-being is important as well.
Well, you're going to be able to use this podcast as a recruitment tool. Imagine there's a lot of young lawyers.
All these questions.
I want to move towards the B Corp thing, but I understand you moved toward that partly through your involvement with that Sandbox organization. Can you share a little bit about that? Like, how did this whole awareness of B Corp and your movement toward it evolve?
Yeah, when we first were involved with Sandbox, and we were just setting it up as before, like we have a really amazing location now in downtown Barrie, looking over Kempenfelt Bay, over top of the train station or bus station. And it's beautiful. But at that time, we didn't have a location, but we were still starting to try to do some events and raise awareness. And one of the first events that was held was a documentary called The Social Shift. Mm-hmm. I'll plug it, thesocialshift.ca. It's two women, Canadian women, who travel in a van across Canada looking for sort of businesses that are doing good and social enterprises. And B Corp came up in that conversation, and I had never heard of it before. And so I went back to the office and was pretty psyched about the idea of it, but didn't know whether or not we would be even close to being able to certify. So I talked to our COO and our CFO, who both were game to spend really what ended up being the next 5 weeks, a couple of hours per week, going through the online certification process. So they ask you a whole bunch of questions, hundreds of questions, just to kind of see where we would land. And that exercise in and of itself, had we not even been able to be certified initially, was an incredible learning experience, and really made us realize of all the things we, had done well, and all the things that we could do better and hadn't done or hadn't formalized yet. So it was a really cool process to go through. It took some time. And then when at the end we went, we might actually be able to certify here. So we ended up submitting. And then through that process, I mean, they've got somebody who takes over the file and then starts to say, okay, you answered yes to this, prove it. And it's quite a lengthy process of going through and documenting and providing evidence for everything you say, which is why I like it, because I don't know, there's this idea of greenwashing and companies saying that they're doing good or that they're great about providing positive, impact in their communities, but there's no measurement for it. And while I don't think this is perfect, I think it is a really cool way for a third party to come in and assess and really validate the claims of a company. So anyway, we went through the process and in 2019, I think it was August of 2019, we got our certification, and it was a really big deal. We were super excited. As you mentioned, we were first in Ontario and third and largest, I think, in Canada, law firm. And it then gave us a mechanism by which we could get better. Mm-hmm. So the idea is every 3 years you recertify and you go back and you try to get more points. So the program, after you've answered and provided what it is you're doing to date, will then give you a whole list of things that you could be doing better or as well. And so we just started plugging away on working at that. And it really did make us better. And it made us think about policies and procedures and things that we hadn't thought about before. It made us think more about the environment, which isn't a natural for a law firm. Mm-hmm. You're not necessarily thinking about environmental impact because you're not a company that's creating, I don't know, some kind of effluent or something. Like that's what I think about when I think environmental with companies. But it led us down the road of becoming carbon neutral. It led us down the road of becoming a
You told me for the living wage.
living wage. Thank you. A
Yeah.
living wage certified. And so it's had a lot of positive impact for us and our firm and our culture.
And so I've actually made an assumption as we started. Some listeners may be going, what the hell is a B Corp?
Oh yeah.
It's a benefits corporation. And what was the attraction to it, and what does it actually mean, like to be B Corp certified? If I'm somebody out there looking for a law firm and one is B Corp certified and one isn't, like, what's the difference? Why does that matter to me?
Yeah, so it's a certification process, I guess, that ensures that the company that is B Corp certified, we've had to prove performance in 5 categories. So you have to prove that you are always taking into account not only profit, but also thinking about your people and your community and your environment and your suppliers when you're making decisions. And they assess areas of governance and how you treat your workers and how you deal with your customers and what you do in your community. And there's kind of points ascribed, like quarters of points ascribed to different things. So, and in order to become B Corp certified, you have to actually build the requirement decision-making to include not only profit, but also how will these decisions impact our people and our community and our environment. It's got to be baked into the legal structure. So if you're incorporated, you have to amend your articles of incorporation to include it. We were a partnership, so we amended our partnership agreement to include an agreement amongst the partners that we would assess that. And so that might, like, an example of that would be, we looked at our suppliers, and wherever possible, we changed to local. And where we hadn't really thought about it, we just ordered, like, we just have suppliers and we ordered from wherever. And maybe we thought about it when it became obvious, somebody we knew or a client of ours who provided that service or was a supplier, then we would want to obviously try to support them. But generally speaking, like, it made us go through every supplier. And if we could, we tried our very best to support local. And even looking at, does that supplier support local? It becomes something that, again, wasn't something that we necessarily thought about.
How's it helped you? What has it actually done for you? Again, if I'm out there listening to this going, okay, sounds good, but, like, how's that going to help my business?
Well, I think it builds trust. And I think it is a growing idea, especially the younger generation. I think there's this concept of voting with your dollars, right? Supporting the kinds of businesses that are doing good in the community because it's important to you. Like, you see investments like that now. And so I think more and more, especially the younger generation, is looking for that. I just had my partner text me the other day. They were being interviewed by a potential very large new client, and they were asked about the B Corp certification, and it became sort of one of the decision-making components of being retained, which we were. It also, so I think there's the aspect of clients looking for companies that are doing good to support. And then I think there's the aspect of recruitment and retention of people. I think it demonstrates what our culture is all about and makes us sort of stand apart from other law firms in the recruitment process. And it has come up multiple times with, like, when we interview people, more often than not, we are asked about our B Corp certification by people being interviewed. And then from a cultural standpoint, I think it makes our people proud to be part of our organization. And we celebrated our certification. And when our recertification happens, they're a little bit behind on the process, but we're expecting it shortly. We'll celebrate that again. It's something to celebrate and be proud of. So again, it's just another way of talking about what your culture is and what's important to you and your values.
And to the extent, so this is either a potential upside or a potential downside for people to know, like, because of the requirements, there's reporting requirements and there's process improvement requirements. Does it make your operations more efficient, or is it an additional cost?
I don't know about the impact on efficiency. I'm not necessarily sure that I could say that it has a great impact on efficiency. I think there's a cost. I mean, there's a cost to pay when you certify. And there's definitely a people cost for going through the process because it's not a simple process. But there's also a win on the other side, right? So you've got to weigh it. But in my mind, there's a definite advantages in terms of, reputational advantages, recruitment and retention, and cultural advantages that far exceed any cost of the actual process.
Now, the one thing I want to shift to is just as a professional advisor, you've got 40 lawyers and you've got 11 partners. Actually, before I make that shift, I actually did want to ask, with 11 partners and that sort of non-hierarchical decision making that happens within a law firm, and the fact that you have to amend, I can just imagine a bunch of lawyers going, we have to amend our partnership agreement. I imagine that's a fun conversation. How receptive was everybody to the B Corp, or was it a sales job you had to kind of work on?
No, I mean, I think once it was explained, B Corp didn't make our culture. Our culture made us want to pursue B Corp, and so no, it wasn't difficult, to be honest. I think everybody got it, and all of our partners are pretty community minded, and I think we were doing those things really anyway. It just made it a little bit more structured and formalized. But we certainly wouldn't, like, for instance, we would always think about our team and the impacts of our team when we made a decision, stuff like that. So no, it wasn't a hard sell, thank goodness.
Good. That says a lot about your partners as well as you.
Yeah.
Now, you advise business owners, and your partners do, and your associates do. You probably hear things that I know from when I was a lawyer and in my practice as a business coach, I've heard things that clients have told me overtly, like they don't tell anybody else in their lives. So what do you see as the biggest struggles that entrepreneurs face trying to grow and succeed? Like, from your perspective of a professional advisor, what are the things that, if you could just sit them all down and go, for the love of God, if you just did this, you would solve a whole bunch of your problems?
Oh my goodness. Geez, it's so different I feel like for people, depending on where they are in the, sort of the evolution of their business. So when you're first starting out, I would say it's difficult because you're doing everything. Mm-hmm. And so you're your own marketing person and your own, in fact, just today I sent an email and said, our ops department will do that. And the person responded and said, oh, nice to have an ops department. So like that's been the evolution for our firm as well. We didn't used to have an operations department with a COO and a CFO. And so as you grow your business, I think you get to then hire the right people. And that's a really big challenge, right? Finding the right people, recruitment, retention, making sure everyone's aligned. So like from sole proprietor, doing it all and just trying to, figure out how to get customers and renting your first office space if you have to do that, and figuring out contracts and making sure things are done properly, and intellectual property considerations and all of those things. Like there's this whole gamut of, geez, this is all new and I got to figure it out. And then as you evolve, I think it's about getting the right people in the right positions to execute on your vision. And I mean, definitely in the CEO group at Sandbox, we do an awful lot of talking about recruitment and retention. I think that's a challenge, like right now, for everybody. So I know that's a big consideration for people. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, same as you, there's so many things. I always distill it down to 3 foundations that people need to think about and then build on top of that. And I always use a sports analogy, which is that you can't win if you don't know how to keep score. You can't win if you don't have a winning team, and you can't win if you don't have a winning game plan. So to me, that always distills down to you got to know your numbers. A lot of entrepreneurs are afraid of their numbers, and all they do is they look at sales and what's in the bank. And they're missing a whole bunch of storytelling that emerges from a deeper understanding of their financials. They need to be thoughtful, as you've been, about building a culture of high performers, which is different from a nice culture. Actually building a culture of high performers is slightly different than just a nice culture. And then really operating on a series of strategic plans. I personally get my clients on a 90-day planning cycle. rooted in long-term strategic achievement. And then when those three things are in place, all the other topical areas that people engage in, like social media or performance management or system development, all of that gets more easily managed within the structure of those three foundations being in place. Because you can say, okay, the strategy lets me know when those things get put in place. The culture makes sure that the right people are putting those things in place. And then the financial management lets me know whether the things I'm putting in place are actually having the outcome that I'm hoping they do.
Right. That's really interesting. It makes a lot of sense to me. What is it? I'm in the interview, how would that change if like it was a sole proprietor just starting out? Like what? So because I always think like it's such a different game when you're starting out. But would you still say those three things are important and need to be managed?
Except for the team part, like if they're just a sole proprietor.
Your own team.
Yeah. But there's, from a strategic perspective, there's really there's only three things, right? Like to my mind, strategy is just the answer to the question about how do I deploy my scarce resources of time, team, and money.
Yeah.
And so just if you don't have any team, then all you have is time and money. And if you don't have money and you don't have a team,
just time.
Well, then it's time. And then it's like being really intentional and thoughtful about how I use my time most effectively to achieve my objectives. So the lens is still applied. It's just the resources are different, right? And you still have to know your numbers. Like as a sole proprietor, now your numbers are thinner, but it's like you got to know your margins, you got to know your revenue, you got to have a competitive analysis about the pricing in the market, and so those three foundations are still there. And then as you grow, then you're just adding a little bit more and a little bit more to it.
Right. Very interesting.
Yeah, and it informs, because what I find happens, right, is people play whack-a-mole too much. I often say, like, to pin the tail on the donkey's fun game at a kid's party, and whack-a-mole is a good game at a fair, but they suck as business strategies. Yeah. But that's what too many people do. And because they're trying to manage too much at once or just blindly pursue things in a reactive way, they leave themselves sort of vulnerable to the whims and the winds of fortune. Whereas if you actually get very intentional, then you can say, oh, here's where I should be doing my marketing. Here's when I should be recruiting somebody. I had a client recently, like, if you don't manage your cash flow, for instance, and do cash flow projections, how do you know when it's safe to hire somebody?
Yeah.
You could hire somebody and then run out of money before they're generating new revenue. And if you're not managing cash flows, I had a client once she was 3 months from bankruptcy, even though she was running $600,000 in profit, simply because she wasn't managing her cash flow.
Right. Yeah. Interesting. And I get the whack-a-mole thing. Like I think you have to watch that because, it's easy to have happen, and it happens to us. I mean, you react and you have things that pop up constantly, and trying to make sure that you're sort of diverting back to, okay, this is what we're working on, or an opportunity arises, right? We have that all the time. Oh, there's this opportunity.
Yeah.
There's a shiny new thing here. and trying to remember that, okay, we can only do so much. The word.
How do you manage that when that comes up? Because you said you do strategic planning retreats, and you do have a strategic plan. And so I want to poke at this a little bit, because this is interesting.
Okay, but I want to say that I'm not an expert in strategic planning, but I'll tell you what we try to do.
No, that's great. I mean, you don't have to be an expert. But one of the things that's true is, like, 80% of strategy fails, and it fails because of execution.
Yeah.
And it's usually, and one of the things that goes wrong is either, there's probably more than this, but I just want to see your thoughts on this. So either people are too rigidly attached to the strategy, and so they don't know how to adjust on the fly when new things come in, or they go through this strategic planning and then they just sort of almost throw it on a shelf because there's a whole bunch of new stuff that comes in, and they yield the strategy to whatever was there, whatever the new thing is. And good strategic planning is more like, how do I adjust? Like any military commander and any sports coach will tell you that what happens on the field of battle never perfectly reflects the plan. But without the plan, they would have got their butts kicked if they're using it right. So how do you manage that, having a strategy, yet new things come up in the course of the running of the business?
Yeah. I will say that for a year, because I mean, we've been doing this a really long time now. and we've gone through a number of different strategic planning exercises. And, I've gone through the one where you get like the book that's this thick of, used to be printed, remember, like the book and everything that we had to do. You're 100% right. We would go through this big process. We'd spend a couple of days. We'd all have great conversations, which are meaningful. And then there, whoever was leading it would come up with this big plan, and we'd be, this is so great. Look at us. We have this wonderful plan in this wonderful spiral bound book. And then it would go and sit on a shelf somewhere and collect dust. And how my brain works is like, I have a one-pager brain. So if you cannot reduce what we need to do in one page, then there's a problem. So I make a little chart, and I have our mission and our vision, and then our values, and then the execution of what it is we're going to do that year. And then we revisit it. And so, are you doing 57 other things too? Yes. I mean, obviously you have to run a firm, a business. But that's how I've handled it, is I literally just report back, and I, like, when it's with just our executive committee, I literally type little things on the chart, just say, we've done this, we haven't done this, we've done this, we haven't done this. And then we're just trying out a system, and I can't think of the name of it. I'll think of it when I'm not trying to think of it. But that aligns, like, so the work that needs to be done and the people who are doing it with each area to be executed on. So we are trying to get a little bit better at sort of reporting back and deadlines and ensuring that things get completed. But I really like, as much as possible, to be able to simplify, so that it is easy to sort of look. I like pictures. So it's a picture, and it's easy to kind of see the overall what you're trying to accomplish, and then the little overall arching things that you're trying to do, projects that you've decided you're going to embark upon in the year, and then try to keep people up to timelines. So that's how we've sort of attacked it the last few years.
Do people have accountabilities within the plan?
Yes, I would say, like, we're just working on the formalization of the deadlines for those accountabilities, right? Which is the one thing that I think we could do better. And so we've, as I say, instituted this new software to try to be a little bit better on, like, so when do you need that done? And then reporting back at that timeline, on those timelines and such.
Right. Nice. And you find it, like, do people appreciate it? And is it, do you have a cycle, or is it just a strategic plan for the year, or do you have?
It's been we haven't changed our strategic plan, like overarching strategic plan, I want to say, and I think we're in year 3. Of course, under the main strategies or main headings, we do change, like we add things, or we decide what we're going to work on in terms of pursuing those things. But we are probably due to start to do a new strategy session in the next year or 2. We kind of look at it like 5-year increments, 4 or 5-year increments. And we're still working on getting some of the things that we wanted to get accomplished done. So it's still relevant. I think what we have is still relevant. And this whole transforming, like, one of our visions is to transform the law firm experience. And that's a pretty large goal. And so that's always a work in progress, right? So that's a good guiding light for projects and things that we're working on to try to make some headway on that vision.
One of the things I found effective in that is doing a 90-day cycle, like taking the big strategy and then saying 90 days, this is our strategic focus in this 90-day period. Here's our strategic focus in this 90-day period. And then they sort of like, here's the metaphor I use. Like, I used to be a theater director, right? And I'd say, and I've done this in workshops with entrepreneurs, and it's a bit sphincter tightening for some of them, or embarrassing, is that, a group of actors will start with a book this thick and 3 blank walls. And in 7 weeks, they will design, construct, install sets, lights, sounds, props, costumes, market, put butts in seats, rehearse, and they will open the curtains on 7:59 on a Thursday night, 7 weeks later, with 100% predictability, and they're all flakes. And I say that lovingly because I was one, right? And so if a bunch of flakes can pull together something with that degree of complexity, with that degree of predictability in a 7-week period, why can't you as an entrepreneur make foundational changes in 90 days?
Oh my gosh, that is amazing. I love that analogy. I've seen that happen, and it's like incredible what they do in such a short period of time. So I think that's such a great analogy. And I mean, I should pick your brain off this podcast, because I'm sure I have all kinds of things to learn. Again, I'm not you're the expert on this, the strategy. We're doing the best we can.
Well, that's good. So I have some sort of rapid fire questions. You've been really generous with your time, so I don't want to keep you too long. As a business owner, what have been your biggest struggles, or what are the biggest ones you're facing now?
Oh, biggest struggles. I think we're in pretty high growth mode. And so the 40 lawyers and 140 people is, if you ask me next month or in 2 months, it'll be higher. And so that's always, it's balancing growth with retaining culture and making sure, again, when you bring new people on, right, you have this responsibility to make sure that process is a good experience. And there's so many components of bringing someone new onto your team. In terms of, you think of the obvious compute training on our such systems and such, but there's so much more to it, to making people feel part of the team in those first few months. So that's sort of an ongoing challenge for us as we continue to grow. And then also I think we still have kind of a small firm feel. I mean, we're probably considered a mid-size law firm at this point, but I don't want to lose that small firm feel and that collegiality and such. So that's a challenge for sure. Obviously, we were talking before the show about AI. AI is going to be definitely a challenge for us. And so I've been doing a lot of reading about AI, and it's a threat. If you think about SWOT, it's definitely a threat to law firms. And so we've got to make sure that we are ensuring that we're bringing real and true human value to our clients, right? Like with that, we cannot be replaced. I don't feel we can be replaced by a machine. I think machines can help us do things more efficiently for our clients and save costs for our clients, and probably some really basic things. But the value that we bring, we need to just ensure is being conveyed. The experience, the expertise, the human understanding, empathy, the things that a machine can't provide. Thinking outside the box, advice, those kinds of things. So we're definitely want to continue to ensure that we're understanding of the implications of AI, and also responding by ensuring that our value proposition is still obvious to our clients.
Right. Nice. So what's one decision or action that most helped you get where you are?
Probably valuing myself, and being more confident in my skill set. That's a tough one for me. Like, I'm a definite lifelong learner. And so I think I never really feel like I have all the answers to everything. But leadership isn't really, I don't know. I think it's not necessarily about that. There was this quote about, like, a leader has the responsibility for finding potential in people and processes, and then developing that potential. Like, I really feel like I should just be making sure we have a whole bunch of really great leaders. Right. And so I don't know, having the self-confidence to put myself forward as in a leadership position when I was, like, many years ago, and participating, and going down that route of running the business, not just being a lawyer, was, I think, put me down a road that I've always been very, very happy with. I really enjoy the business of law and running a business, and conversations like I'm having with you now. So I think that was probably the decision that set me off on the path to then being in a position where I am now, where I feel like I have the honor, really, and responsibility of leading this firm.
And if you had to do it all over again, is there anything you would do differently if you had the chance?
I refuse to answer that question.
Fair enough.
Like, everyone has regrets and everyone has things they wish they'd done differently.
It's more a way of framing what's the learning, like, is there
I feel like no, in a way, because like even my mistakes led me to this place where I feel very fortunate to be.
Right.
So you're not getting any dirt.
Fair enough. What's one personal quality that you most had to improve or overcome?
Oh, it's still a work in progress. I'm very sensitive to criticism. Yeah, I take, like, everything is personal to me, and it's a terrible affliction for somebody who has to report back to a bunch of especially critical lawyers. And it's definitely a work in progress. Like, I need to continue to remember to separate our firm and our decisions and what we do with myself personally. I'm very personally invested. And so maybe that's good in some ways, but in some ways it also means that I struggle sometimes with taking things too personally when it doesn't go my way, or somebody has some, criticism that I deem to be a bit more personal than just business. So
it's like,
anyway,
it's not a necessary, but it's a common cost of caring.
Yes, and maybe it is a necessary for me, because I'm not sure I'll ever be able to really change that aspect of me as a human being. But I'm trying to be more graceful and with myself.
And with no false humility, what's one personal quality of yours that most contributed to your success?
You know what? So some people, I've been asked in the past, what's your superpower, right? Like, if you had to have a superpower, what's your superpower? I'm just like, I'm very organized and efficient. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that should be underestimated. It's not sexy. It's not like, great leadership qualities or what have you, but it has really helped me throughout my life, like through school and then on to becoming a lawyer and then on to running a firm. I think it helps to have, and it's almost like it's like an organized mind, mm-hmm. And so I think that's probably, if I had to say that what was my superpower, it's probably that. Kind of boring, but
powerful. Yeah. Any last thoughts?
Yours,
sorry?
What's yours?
Oh, I can't share that. But mine, I think, is it's a similar. Someone once gave me this description of it that was pretty apt. I have an ability to think large and small at the same time. That I can sort of see the big picture and how the detail implication, what the detailed implication of that is at the same time. So I can look at, the business wants to go here, but here's the weakness, and translate the large thing into the small actions really, really quickly.
That's cool.
Yeah, so that has been consistently sort of what I've received feedback on, and what I've seen is that and the interesting thing about superpowers, right, is that they're things that sort of come easy to you that you don't think they're special. But like, right. one of the things I do is I do pitch training and presentation training as well, because I'm a strategist and a theater director, and I've got a really unique approach.
Yeah, it's an interesting intersection of skill sets, right?
Yeah, and so there's 2 incubators in Toronto that, for a while, like they've closed since, but none of their cohort were allowed to go talk to investors until they went through me. And one of the reasons was that I could sort of look at the overall presentation, but then distill it down to write down what the story and the messaging needs to be very, very fast. So that seems to be a big part of my thing, is that large and small at this simultaneously.
Yeah, very valuable skill set. Yeah.
Yeah. Any last thoughts? I know I wanted to give you the opportunity to talk about your mediation group too. That's just a new part of your business, and just tell people that's what that's about. Because it's a unique thing, but it's pretty high value, I think, for people who want to avoid costs of litigation and things like that.
Yeah, thanks for asking. It's a new business that we started just at the end of last year called Resolved. RESOLV', just to be interesting. And it's a mediation, arbitration, employment investigation services. Mediation in particular, like I feel like it resonates with me, again, on this idea of people wanting to be heard, people wanting to feel understood. Mediation just sort of allows people to come together and have the opportunity to actually feel heard and understood, and even participate in their own resolution of their dispute in a much, less expensive, faster than litigation, for sure. And I think people can often walk away from that experience maybe feeling okay with the final resolution because they participated in it, and not just having a judge sort of impose upon them a decision, which maybe the judge doesn't know the full story. They still don't really feel heard. I just think there's so much value in that. And from an access to justice, standpoint as well, it's so valuable. Family law context, business conflicts, estate, litigation context, things like that. I just think we're seeing a lot of experience or success with people who are really experienced in being able to bring the parties together and get that resolution, or even partial resolution, so you can narrow the litigation issues and make it, at least simplify it, is really valuable. So we're just starting on a pretty big marketing campaign to spread the word on that. We've got an amazing roster of judges, ex-judges, retired judges, and very, very senior lawyers who have been practicing in their fields for a long time to take those kinds of issues on. So yeah, it's an exciting new development for us.
That is exciting. And where can people find you?
www.barristonlaw.com.
All right, just like people don't, and the mediation, is it same URL? Or?
Resolve.ca.
All righty. Thank you so much for your time. This has been fascinating, and it's such a great, lawyers often have a somewhat negative reputation, but I think hopefully people will have learned a lot out of this, and to see somebody so committed to community and caring and to their team and to doing things with value while providing value has been really extraordinary. And I congratulate you on all your success and your commitment to doing things the right way.
Well, thanks so much for having me. As usual, I've learned something as well, so I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks very much for joining us.
Take care.